Delphi murder suspect Richard Allen remains in custody after a judge in Indiana put off his bail hearing until next year and will mull over the decision to unseal the arrest affidavit as the mother of one of his alleged victims begs for it to remain sealed. Allen, 50, was given court-appointed lawyers after sending a handwritten letter to the court asking for representation last week. His lawyers have since filed a request for Allen to be released without posting bond or by setting a reasonable bail amount, which will be considered on February the 17th at a bail hearing. Allen is accused of murdering both Libby German, 14, and her friend Abigail Williams, 13, as they hiked a trail in Delphi, Indiana in February 2017. He has pleaded not guilty to both counts of murder, and prosecutors have sealed his arrest warrant from being accessed by the public. As part of Allen's petition to be let out on bail, his attorneys say, quote, "Because neither the proof of guilt is evident nor the presumption of guilt strong, the accused is seeking a hearing to release the accused." Carroll County prosecutors requested that the court records be sealed, with Special Judge Frances Gold deciding to delay her decision on if it should be handed over to the public during a 30-minute hearing on Tuesday. Fox News 59 confirmed that no one else was named during the court hearing as being linked to the case. The probable cause affidavit and charging information will remain under seal until Judge Gold makes her decision, as the mother of Libby has begged for it to remain under wraps. Okay, so at this point in time it would appear that the affidavit will remain sealed. Now it doesn't mean it's going to remain sealed forever. It just means that the Judge Frances Gold is going to take her time, take that document away and make a decision at a later date. Now, interestingly here, we have quite conflicting views online regarding this affidavit and what it actually contains. Now, I've speculated in previous videos of mine that I believe that there's definitely a deeper connection here. Keegan Kline, possibly other individuals, some kind of ring, other people involved in the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Maybe not physically involved in the murders, but at least had knowledge of them. But online we have, as I say, quite conflicting views. We have one reporter who came out after this hearing to say that he believed that there's other people involved or potentially other people involved. This is why the affidavit is going to remain sealed for the time being. But then looking at Max Lewis, who works for Fox 59, I believe, he spoke to Richard Allen's attorney, and it states the following here. Richard Allen's attorney on revelation in court today that second person possibly involved in Delphi murders. His reply was, quote, "If you read the probable cause affidavit, it does not mention anything about any other person. That was news to us." We also have some discussion from Barbara McDonald, who was inside the courtroom this morning, and she discussed Richard Allen's behaviour during this hearing. She stated the following. Richard Allen made eye contact with several members of the victims' families, according to Barbara McDonald. Barbara McDonald was sitting with several family members. Richard Allen made eye contact for several seconds, scanned the rows the family members were sitting. He took in the environment and scanned the room a lot, rather than keeping his head down. He didn't say a single word during today's proceedings. Interestingly, we also have the following here. The defence attorneys say that they and Richard Allen want these documents public. Prosecutors provided the judge with a redacted version to consider releasing. Okay, so then we've got this affidavit. The prosecutors have provided the judge with a redacted version. The defence attorneys and Richard Allen want these documents public. Now, we've heard from the defence attorney very briefly who said there's no mention of any other parties in this affidavit. The evidence doesn't appear to be very strong. Now, obviously, when you read that, first of all, you think, well, of course, that's what the defence is going to say. But if there was something really glaringly obvious, some massive smoking gun here, would they be really that keen to release that information out into the public? Would they? I mean, that's a question I'm asking myself. Defence attorneys say that they and Richard Allen want these documents public. So the prosecution doesn't want it made public, yet the defence and Richard Allen actually do. Now, equally, you could say that this document is going to be released at some point in time, and this is simply the defence maybe appearing more confident than what they actually are, trying to get ahead of the game, if you will. Maybe they want to, appear confident and that they've got all the answers to what is in this probable cause affidavit. But it's interesting there that they mentioned, or his defence attorney mentioned, that there's only one name. It's only Richard Allen that appears in this affidavit, which makes me question everything that I've believed really for the last few weeks regarding there being multiple people involved, some kind of ring, the possible Keegan-Klein angle reappearing. I do wonder what is in that document and why they are keeping it sealed. We've got, as I say, the judge who's received a redacted version of this. Are we going to see this maybe in the next few days, the next few weeks? Or is it going to remain unsealed, possibly even for the months to come? If, however, there is only one name in this affidavit, or it only points to one individual in Richard Allen, then where exactly does this leave Keegan-Klein and his involvement, if any, in these murders? Now, I'll just put it out there and I'll be quite honest. I am going from one side to the other in this case. Initially, even before the arrest, to be perfectly honest, I was really convinced that there is at least one individual concerned in these murders. There is something a little bit bigger going on, and that's why it has taken so long to make any arrests, because they're tracking certain people down, they're putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, so to speak. And then when we had the arrest of Richard Allen just recently, and then we had these articles that were released that said basically we came across Richard Allen. He was someone that came forward to law enforcement at a very early stage, and we had a task force that went back over old tips, and something didn't appear right, so we looked into it, and here we go. He's been under our nose the whole entire time. Just this one individual, lived local individual, as we said all along, and he's responsible for these murders. I went from believing that this is some sort of deep level situation to actually swaying a little bit, thinking, hang on a minute, maybe it is just one individual, a lone wolf. This person just happened to come across Liberty German and Abigail Williams that day and murdered them. But then I swayed back and I thought about this a little bit more. I thought, actually, no, hang on, let's go back to the Keegan-Klein interview. There's definitely something in here, this connection, the Emily Ann account, all of his connections via Dropbox, the sharing of links, the CSAM ring. There has to be something bigger here. Let's now take a listen in to a reporter who was actually in the courtroom for this hearing earlier this morning.
Well, good morning. It was a hearing before Judge Fran Gull out of Allen County, the special judge assigned to hear this case. It lasted just a half hour. We left the courtroom just minutes ago. Richard Allen was brought into the courtroom. He was in a yellow jail jumpsuit. He was heavily trussed up with chains covered over a Kevlar jacket. He was brought into the courtroom. His family sat right in front of me in the courtroom. He did make eye contact with them. The prosecutor for Carroll County, Nicholas McClellan, stood and requested that the judge continue the sealed probable cause that was filed on October 28th during a behind closed doors initial hearing. McClellan argued in front of the judge that he used words chaos. He pointed to the courtroom, the abundance of the media there, and also the security there, and said this is the reason why we need to secure and keep this probable cause secret. He said two reasons. One, because we fear that witnesses in the case will be harassed by the media or be put in danger. But most significantly, he said, we believe Richard Allen is not the only person involved in this case. He continued to make his argument with the judge. Then it was the opportunity of the defense attorney, Bradley Rossi, who defends Richard Allen. And he was able to argue counter to that. He says, we have actually seen that unredacted probable cause. We don't think that there is absolutely anything in there that shows not only to the guilt of our client, but also he indicated that we have seen no evidence that there is any sort of danger to any member of the public. Nobody has come forward and said I'm being harassed unfairly, in danger to the public. And he also said, I see no indication that there's any other involvement in this case. The judge has determined, upon taking all that information in, that she has set a hearing for mid-February when this issue, not only the bail issue will be brought up, because his defense attorneys yesterday filed that he be released on bail. The judge says she will hear arguments on February 17th about whether or not to release Richard Allen on bail. However, regarding whether or not to release the redacted or unredacted probable cause, the judge has received a redacted version from the prosecutor with names of witnesses blacked out. She says, I will take this under consideration. I will then give you a written advisement on my opinion of this at this time. We are not going to receive that probable cause today. The judge has instead received it from the prosecutor with names blacked out. She will take a look at that to determine if that is a reasonable way to undergo and keep the public fully informed as to the details of this case. One of the arguments that the defense made said, we have seen nothing but press conferences for 5 years from investigators from the state police asking people to tune in, asking people to come forward with tips, and now that we've got charges against my client, against Richard Allen in this case, all of a sudden the prosecutor wants to shut down all public input into this investigation. And the hearing, as I said, lasted just a half hour. Richard Allen was taken out of the courtroom, and then the rest of us were released from that courtroom.
Russ, I wanted you to catch your breath for a minute, and I want to just make sure that I heard you correctly, because this is the one thing that people have been waiting to hear for a very long time. I understand you to say that one of the reasons the prosecutor wants this to be sealed is that they believe that Richard Allen is not the only person involved. Can you clarify that and then dig deeper a little bit in that?
It was a brief statement from the prosecutor because, frankly, he spent most of his time being concerned about the media coverage. That involved most of his argument. However, he did say that we believe Richard Allen is not the only person involved in this case. And that was one of the two justifications he used to say the investigation continues. We cannot jeopardize the continuing investigation by releasing the probable cause at this point in time with some of the information that would be revealed and therefore would hamper the investigation. Now, he issued 4 exhibits that he used to support his position that the probable cause remains sealed. 2 of them were from investigators who said, because of all the work we've done on this, we believe there is sensitive information here. We don't want this released to the public. Another one is a letter from Becky Patty. Of course, she is Libby German's grandmother. Said she didn't want that information out. And also, the attorney referenced an online petition, which he said the prosecutor said there was an online petition which had gathered 40,000 signatures, which showed there was widespread support for continuing the seal on this probable cause.
We're just watching some live video of the van that brought Richard Allen to the courthouse, just leaving the courthouse right now. How long do you expect the judge in this case to look over that redacted probable cause and release it?
The judge took the redacted probable cause in hand during the briefing, during the hearing this morning. She said she was going to issue a written advisement on it. She said she was not entering it as an exhibit, so it would not become necessarily part of the public file, but rather taking it under advisement for her review privately. If this is Tuesday, conceivably she could decide within 24 hours. We do have a holiday week this week. She may want to get this off her desk before the holiday, which then goes Thursday and Friday, and of course there would be no court opportunities to take a look at that. She could do it that quickly, and it was interesting that the prosecutor came to court prepared with that instead of being directed by the judge to provide a redacted copy. He came to court with that redacted copy, giving everyone an idea that he had an idea of what would have been required to release that information and to get the judge's approval.
That's a couple more questions here. I wanted to go back over who was in the courtroom. Again, was any family member of Richard Allen? I think you briefly touched on that off the top, but I wanted to hear a little bit more specifics about that, specifically his daughter or his wife.
Well, there were 2 older women who were sitting right in front of me in the courtroom that were shown to special seats, secluded, set aside for them. I would say there were at least a couple dozen members of the victims' families. The rest of the courtroom was filled out basically by the media. It was also ringed by easily 10 to a dozen police officers, including state troopers and Carroll County Sheriff's deputies, and an attorney representing Indianapolis news media was also on hand. He filed a brief yesterday indicating that it would be appropriate to release this information publicly. However, while his brief was accepted, he was not called upon to offer any argument or testimony before the judge.
Okay, we had a producer in our ear right there. I apologize, but did you say that they did not get to hear from the attorney from the other side on why it should be released?
The judge did not hear from the attorney representing the Indianapolis news media.
Yes.
Instead, there was a brief filed, but he did not was not offered an opportunity to testify or offer an argument, and we are hoping to interview attorney Dan Byron outside the courthouse here this morning.